They didn't just think I was a failure. That night, my family made sure everyone at Preston's lavish engagement party knew it too. I sat motionless, hands resting neatly on the white linen napkin, staring at my untouched glass of wine. In my ear, my father Richard's laughter rang out. He was telling his favorite joke, the story of my lost years. Preston, the golden child, smirked, twisting his solid gold Rolex while my mother, Catherine, nodded in agreement as if my failure was a universal fact. I didn't interrupt. I didn't justify myself. I learned long ago that in this family, silence is the only shield. But then, Camilla, Preston's fiancée, the heiress to a shipping empire, suddenly leaned forward. Her eyes didn't hold the disdain the others had. They held horror. She looked at me, then down at her phone lighting up on the table and back at me. "Wait a second," she whispered, her trembling voice cutting through the noise. "You are—" The VIP room suddenly fell silent. Even my mother stopped cutting her prime steak. The air froze, cold and sharp as a knife. Before I tell you what happened next, hit like, comment where you're watching from, and share this if your family has ever underestimated you. Because the dead silence in that room was the sound of a ticking time bomb hitting zero. My name is Elena Vance, and in my family's world, names only have value if they come with titles you can brag about. Surgeon, hedge fund manager, senior partner, anything that sounds stable, predictable, and most importantly, profitable. My name didn't fit. It floated around the dinner table that night like annoying background noise, only acknowledged when someone needed a contrast to highlight Preston's brilliant success. But they didn't know that my silence wasn't submission, it was preparation. The engagement party was held at the Gilded Cage, a private club in Upper Manhattan, where black mahogany walls reflected the light of crystal chandeliers worth a fortune. The air smelled of old money, expensive leather, and Le Labo perfume. My parents worshipped places like this. They believed the room you sit in defines your worth, and what you actually achieve is secondary. I was seated at the corner of the table, 2 seats away from the center of attention, Preston and Camilla. This spot wasn't random. It was carefully calculated to crop me out of family photos. Preston, in a custom-fit Armani suit, looked completely relaxed, already rehearsing for the role of family patriarch. People leaned in when he spoke, laughing louder than necessary at his dull jokes about the stock market. My mother, Catherine, with a string of pearls tied around her neck, occasionally glanced at me. Her eyes scanned the simple black shirt I was wearing. No logos, no jewelry. She wrinkled her nose slightly, as if my simplicity was a bad smell polluting this luxurious space. "Elena," she said, her fake sweet voice loud enough for the waiters to hear. "I told you to borrow your cousin's old dress. Look at you sitting there. You look so out of place. People will think we can't afford to take care of our youngest daughter." Preston smirked, swirling the dark red wine in his glass. "Come on, Mom. Elena likes the minimalist style. Or is it broke style, sis? If you need Uber money to get home, just ask. Don't walk, it embarrasses the family." The whole table laughed. Polite laughter, but sharp as razors. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, but my face remained terrifyingly calm. I looked at the candle flickering in front of me, focusing on the blue flame at the center. They saw a failed daughter shrinking in shame. They didn't know that I wasn't bowing my head. I was counting down. The waiter brought out the appetizers, seared foie gras and beluga caviar. Preston picked up his fork like it was a scepter. His story shifted from the stock market to his plans to buy a vacation villa in the Hamptons. "I plan to have a private dock," Preston boomed, his voice full of self-importance, glancing at Camilla for approval. "Mom and Dad can come for the summer. It will be a symbol of the Vance legacy." My father, Richard, slapped the table. "That's my boy. Visionary. Unlike, he let the sentence hang, but his gaze slid over me like a physical insult. I sat still, hands on my lap. I didn't touch the food. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because I knew the price of this meal. Every bite here came with a lecture on gratitude that I'd have to hear about for the next 10 years. My mother, Catherine, took a sip of champagne, then smiled at me, the smile of a predator playing with its prey. Elena, don't worry. When Preston buys the house, I'll tell him to save the small room in the basement for you. You can come help clean up after the parties. Consider it a working vacation. The table laughed again. Louder this time, crueler. Preston chimed in, patronizingly. Great idea, Mom. Hourly wage, right, Elena? Anyway, with your current job, what is it? Data entry? You'd never dream of stepping foot in the Hamptons otherwise. He snapped his fingers for the waiter to pour more wine, a smooth and arrogant gesture. He treated me no differently than that waiter, invisible and existing only to serve his ego. I pressed my thumb into my palm. The anger didn't flare up like fire. It was cold, like a glacier. I looked straight into Preston's eyes, so calm that he paused for a second. He didn't know that the villa he was bragging about buying, the bank had just rejected his loan this morning, and the person who signed that rejection, through a holding company, was me. As the third round of drinks was poured, my family's condescension shifted to a new, crueler phase, fake pity. My mother leaned toward Camilla, lowering her voice to a whisper that was loud enough for the whole table, a technique she'd perfected over years of charity tea parties. She placed a manicured hand on Camilla's bare arm, glancing sideways at me with concern. I hope Elena's presence doesn't make you uncomfortable, she said, her voice like honey mixed with arsenic. You know, not everyone in this family was lucky enough to get the success gene like Preston. Elena is still in her finding herself phase, even though this phase has lasted almost 10 years. My father nodded, cutting his rare steak decisively. Exactly. We always taught Preston to be an ocean shark. But Elena, well, she's more like a goldfish, needs to be kept in a glass bowl, fed on time, and can't handle big waves. We still have to help her with rent. That was a blatant lie. The last time they sent me money was 6 years ago. A $50 check for my birthday with a note. Buy something nice for a job interview. I never cashed it. I kept it clipped in my first business plan notebook as a reminder of the value they placed on me. I felt the heat rising up the back of my neck, but I forced my heart rate to slow down. I focused on small details to keep from exploding: the scratch on the silver candlestick, the heavy scent of lilies, the clinking of silverware on bone china. Camilla didn't join in their jokes. She sat opposite me, back straight. She didn't look at Preston, nor my parents. Her sharp eyes, the eyes of a woman who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts, were fixed on me. She didn't see the goldfish my father described. She was seeing my irrational calmness, and for the first time tonight, I saw suspicion flash in her eyes. Camilla Sterling wasn't like my family. My family was new money, loud, showy, and always terrified people wouldn't know they were rich. Camilla was different. She came from a family that had dominated the shipping industry on the East Coast for 3 generations. She radiated a quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to scream to be heard. Throughout dinner, while Preston showed off and my parents played the role of high-class sycophants, Camilla just observed. She didn't participate in the mockery. She sat there, sipping her wine, her cold amber eyes scanning each person like she was appraising merchandise. When my father told a fake story about how I dropped out of college because of the pressure, in reality, I left to start a business after winning a full scholarship. Camilla didn't smile. She tilted her head slightly, her sharp gaze sweeping over my outfit. She wasn't looking at the labels. She was looking at the demeanor. She saw how I sat straight, motionless like a stone statue in a flood. She saw how I controlled my breathing, how I didn't flinch at the insults. Failures usually shrink away or fight back weakly. But me? I sat there with the composure of a general waiting for the moment to order fire. "You seem very disciplined," Camilla spoke suddenly, cutting off Preston's loud laughter. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had a weight that made the table pause. Preston quickly waved his hand, afraid the attention was shifting away from him. "Disciplined? Honey, she's just zoned out. Elena is always slow like that." Camilla didn't look at him. She kept her eyes glued to me, her pupils contracting with calculation. She had realized something. She smelled a peer. In the brutal business world she lived in, silence wasn't weakness. Silence was a weapon. And she was starting to wonder why a failure possessed such a weapon. Have you ever had to pretend to be weak to protect your plans? There are secrets that, if revealed, change everything. Before we get to the truth about Elena, leave a comment saying silence is gold if you agree that sometimes saying nothing is the strongest revenge. Everyone in this room believed I was an unemployed welfare case, a stain to be hidden. They saw my calmness and called it the resignation of the weak. But the truth always has its own way of existing, cold and ruthless. While my parents were busy throwing frivolous parties to maintain a cracking upper-class facade, and Preston was busy burning money on gambling-like stock trades, my world operated on a completely different time zone. At 3 a.m., when all of New York slept, my tiny, shabby apartment turned into a command center glowing with screen light. It wasn't the light of movies or games, but of lines of code running continuously, real-time logistics charts, and intense Zoom negotiations with partners from Shanghai to Berlin. I wasn't unemployed. I was the ghost founder of Vertex Logic, the global transport optimization system that my father's own company was paying exorbitant fees to use. Every container they shipped, every order they bragged about closing, I received a system commission fee. I was making money off their arrogance. I learned to measure success not by applause, but by the silent bank balance notifications at midnight. I never spoke about it. Why? Because in this Vance family, success is like fresh bait dropped into a shark tank. If they knew I had money, they wouldn't congratulate me. They would try to control it, take it, or worse, claim it was their doing because they blessed me with this life. Silence was the most expensive armor I ever bought. But Camilla, the woman sitting across from me, was starting to peel back that armor. Her look wasn't observation anymore. It was recognition. My mother was rambling on about how the wedding would be in Vogue magazine, and she planned to wear a custom $10,000 dress, but the mood at the other end of the table had shifted. Camilla wasn't listening anymore. She set her wine glass down, the base hitting the wooden table with a small but decisive click, cutting through my mother's nonsense. "Elena," Camilla spoke up. This time, her tone wasn't social anymore. It carried the weight of a high-level boardroom interrogation. "What exactly do you do for a living?" The question hung in the air like a blade. A moment of silence covered the room. My father, Richard, chuckled, trying to dispel the creeping tension. "Oh, she does odd freelance jobs," he said, waving his hand like shooing a fly. "Data entry, answering phones, that sort of thing. She's trying to find herself after quitting college. Don't mind her, Camilla." "Yeah," Preston chimed in, mouth still chewing on Wagyu beef. "She has some tiny startup projects. Selling handmade stuff online or something, right, Elena? Don't bother Camilla with those petty things. She manages a billion-dollar corporation." I felt the anger roll, but I compressed it into a block of ice in my stomach. This time, I didn't look down at my plate. I looked up, straight at Camilla, completely ignoring my family's existence. "I work in supply chain optimization," I replied. My voice was low, cold, and without a single tremor. Preston burst out laughing, almost choking on his wine onto his white shirt. Supply chain optimization? You mean you know how to stack boxes in an Amazon warehouse neatly? Camilla didn't laugh. She held up one finger, signaling Preston to be quiet, a gesture so powerful and definitive that he shut his mouth immediately, the smile twisted on his lips. She looked at me more intently, eyes sharp as a scalpel. Automated operations platforms? She asked, technical terms starting to pour out. Testing the depth of the water. Real-time AI integration, multi-point risk forecasting, I answered curtly, looking her in the eye. Scale? Global. 35 countries. The two major ports in Singapore and Rotterdam just signed exclusive contracts last week. The room went dead silent. The sound of silverware stopped. The mocking smile on my mother's lips vanished, replaced by utter confusion. My father frowned as if hearing an alien language. They had never heard me speak like this. Wait, Camilla whispered, her voice suddenly dropping, carrying a mix of reverence and shock. Wait, Camilla repeated, her hand slowly sliding into her Hermes bag. Her movement was as careful as a bomb disposal expert. She pulled out a thin tablet, fingers swiping quickly across the screen. Preston smirked, shaking his head in disbelief. Honey, don't tell me you believe her lies. This girl forgets to pay her electric bill, let alone global optimization. Elena, stop it. You've been a clown long enough. Camilla didn't answer. She spun the tablet around, sliding it gently across the glossy glass table. The device stopped right in the center, facing my parents and Preston. On the screen was the cover of the latest issue of Industry Week. The headline was bold, black as a sentence. The ghost of logistics, the woman rewriting global rules. Below was a steep growth chart and the familiar cobalt blue logo of Vertex Logic. No portrait, Camilla said, voice icy. The founder always refuses photos. Investors call her the silent architect. But look at the name of the algorithm copyright holder at the bottom. My father squinted, leaning down. Preston also leaned in, the smile on his face distorting and then extinguishing like a snuffed candle. There, in small but clear text, E. Vance Holdings, LLC. Vertex Logic, Camilla continued, her eyes pinned on Preston, ruthless and direct. That is the exact company that rejected your loan application last week, Preston. And also, the partner your father has been trying to invite to dinner for 6 months, but was rejected by the secretary, with the reason not on the same level. Time seemed to stop. I could hear the air conditioner humming and the dry swallow in my mother's throat. The space in the VIP room suddenly felt tight, suffocating. Their snobbish, smug faces were now twisted in pure horror. They weren't just looking at an article. They were watching their world order collapse right before their eyes. You, Preston stammered, his face drained of blood. You are the one who sent the rejection email? I took a sip of wine. The bitter taste was now strangely sweet. I didn't send the email, Preston, I said softly. I just told my assistant to hit delete. Seeing bullies crumble is the moment we wait for. If you feel satisfied seeing Preston get exposed, hit the share button immediately. Don't keep this satisfaction to yourself. Spread it. The air in the VIP room felt vacuumed out. The truth about me wasn't just shocking information. It was a direct slap to the entire value system the Vance family worshipped. My mother, a woman who never lost her composure in public, was now trembling. She reached out to me, diamond-ringed fingers clawing at the air like a drowning person grasping for a log. Elena, she gasped, voice cracking, trying to piece back the happy family script that had been shredded. Mom and Dad knew you could do it. We always pushed you because we wanted you to rise up. This is a shared success for the family, right? I slid my chair back slightly, creating a clear physical distance, avoiding her touch as if it carried a disease. Shared success? I asked back, voice cold. When you told your friends I was unemployed so they would pity you, was that a business strategy? Preston shot up, his chair crashing to the wooden floor. He looked at me with bloodshot eyes, cowardice beginning to replace arrogance. Elena, you can't do this, he hissed, desperate. The bank is foreclosing on the Hamptons project. If Vertex Logic doesn't sign the shipping guarantee contract, I lose everything. We are siblings. You have to help me. I looked at him, remembering 10 minutes ago he offered me a job cleaning that house. You're right, Preston, I said, my tone calm to the point of cruelty. But did you forget what Dad just said? I'm just a goldfish in a bowl. And goldfish don't have the authority to sign six-figure commercial contracts. I stood up. Slow, decisive movements. I took the napkin, folded it perfectly, and placed it on the table, right next to their leftover food. Furthermore, I turned to look at Camilla, who was quietly taking the engagement ring off her finger and placing it on the table. I have a policy against working with high-risk partners, and this family is a bad debt I've been carrying for too long. I turned and walked away. No screaming, no smashing things. Just the sound of my heels clicking steadily on the wooden floor, leaving behind melting wax statues drowning in humiliation. The November night wind of Manhattan hit my face, biting cold but feeling strangely clean. I stood on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath, smelling freedom mixed with gasoline and wet concrete. The phone in my coat pocket started vibrating. Once, twice, then continuously like a dying spasm. I took it out. The screen lit up with a barrage of messages. Mom. Elena, come back. We need to talk. Don't make a mess of things. Dad. You are misunderstanding Dad's attitude. I only want what's best for you. Preston. I'm sorry, okay? Please pick up. The bank just called me. I didn't block their numbers. That would be too emotional. Instead, I turned off notifications and moved everything to the archive folder. I wanted them to see the word read under every desperate message, but never receive a reply. In the business world, silence in the face of an urgent offer is the most brutal psychological attack. 6 months later, the fake Vance empire collapsed. The Hamptons project was seized by the bank. Preston didn't just lose the project, he lost his fiancée. Camilla called off the engagement 2 days after that fateful dinner. She sent me a short email. Thanks for helping me dodge a bullet. Vertex Logic contract still stands. Let's change the world together. My parents had to sell their upper-class home and move to a smaller apartment in the suburbs. They still tried to save face, telling everyone they wanted to live minimally. But I knew the truth. The party invitations stopped coming to their mailbox. I never went back to that table. I realized that craving family validation is like drinking poison to quench your thirst. It only kills you from the inside. Sometimes, the only way to win a game designed for you to lose is to stand up and flip the board. If you are listening to this story and feel trapped in the toxic expectations of others, remember this: they don't hate your failure. They hate your potential because it shines a light on their mediocrity. Hit like if you believe success is the sweetest revenge. Share your story in the comments below. I read them all. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next stories, we won't just flip the board. We're going to burn the whole room down.